Look at malware analysis, and I believe each and every one of us directly or indirectly might have been affected by malware and want to look at what malware is all about and how we'll be able to identify, detect it, and also mitigate it, assuming that we have been infected by any type of malware. So what is malware? Malware is a malicious code. It's actually a malicious code that causes harm, damage to our system. It's a malicious code that causes harm or damage to our system. So when such code enter our system or software, may say, it's a malicious software that causes harm or damage to our system. And when such software enter our system, either our endpoint devices like laptop, mobile phone, or even our network, it causes a great harm. It also causes damage or even loss. Some even went further to steal our credentials or even steal also prevent us from having access to our devices, causing unauthorized access. And that is why malware analysis is something that we cannot do without in the world of cyber security. And so we have malware, we have different types of malware, and briefly we want to look at different types of malware and some of their behavior for you to know, oh, this is a type of malware I am dealing with right now, and this is the behavior before we go to the analytical part of it. So we have different types of malware. The first one that we might all conversant is called virus. What is virus? Virus is a malicious code that attaches itself to a legitimate file or program and spread when those files are executed. Let me explain first further. When a virus enters your system, for example your laptop, what it does is that it spread, it replicates itself from one folder to another file. For example, if a virus enters your file through a vector called a file or through a file, and you executed that file or even that application, what it does that it can spread from your download folder where it landed to your document folder, to your picture folder, and it begin to infect other files and programs within that system. So that's what virus does. And some of the behavior of virus is that it affects executable or documents. It can also modify or overwrite files and propagate via shared media. What it means is that if I have a virus in my laptop and I insert my flash drive or any other external drive, in such external drive will as well be infected with such virus because it can crawl from one device to another. And what are the indicators of compromise? How do we know that this is actually a virus and not other type of malware? Now, it changes the file hashes. When the virus enters your system, it changes the file hashes of your system, or even can modify the system. Some even went further to convert all the files in your system to a shortcut. So these are different type of indicators of compromise that we have in malware. And when we go fully to the analysis part, we'll look at the defense part. However, some of the defenses that we can have against virus is file integrity monitoring, having an up-to-date antiviruses or block removable media authorized and least privileges. However, when we go fully into malware analysis, when we look at static malware analysis and dynamic malware analysis, we'll be able to go about that. And so these are the different aspects of virus or malware or virus. Now, another malware that is very common among us is called worm. Worm is another aspect of malware that is very common among us. Worm is a self-replicating malware that spread over network without users' action. What does it mean? If a worm enters your devices or your infrastructure, it can replicate itself. It can actually multiply itself. So if one worm enters your system tomorrow, you may see that it has multiplied itself, that you're having like 2 worms. And most time, worm can also have like other malware attached to it. So some of the behaviors that we can see, oh, this is actually a worm and not a virus, is that it scams network. It exploits our services and vulnerability to replicate itself and can carry out payload like the DDoS attack, like the denial of service attack or a dropper. One of the indicators of compromise of worm is that it causes sudden spike in network traffic. It means it overloads your network to make you feel, oh, like billions of persons or thousands of persons is visiting that network. It also causes repeated failed authentications and exploit attempts and new hosting running the same binary. These are some of the indicators of compromise of worm. And some of the defense techniques that we can use, however, when we go into dynamic analysis, we'll go into more of that, is network segmentation, patching, using intrusion detection system or intrusion prevention system or signature, and also limiting can also help us to mitigate worm. So another most striking malware that we can think of is called Trojan horse or Trojan. Trojan horse is actually a malware that disguises itself or masquerades itself as a legitimate software or hidden within it, and it does not replicate itself. One thing about Trojan horse, it does not spray, neither does it replicate itself. If a Trojan enters your system through a file, it will remain in that file. And so some of the behaviors of Trojan is that it performs malicious action after users run it. Perform malicious actions. Some of it like a backdoor, a dropper, an infotech, or a remote access Trojans, and different type of Trojans. So it can perform a particular task. Now, some of the indicators of compromise, some of the things that show that, oh, this is a Trojan, is unexpected new processes. Unexpected new processes will begin to happen, unknown install application begin to install on your system, suspicious outbound network connection from users run on the network. And then some of the defense that we can actually put through on Trojan is application allowed listening. Also, trainings and sensitization is also important in that, and we can also do file reputation analysis or static analysis to strengthen our devices. So another malware we will look at is called ransomware. Ransomware is actually a malware that encrypts files or threatens data release and demand for ransom for decryptions. So the malicious hacker write a software that can encrypt your files or your folder or even cause access denial to your system. And some of the behavior that show, oh, there's a ransomware in your system is mass file encryption, deletions of backup, ransom note, contact or Bitcoin address, or some data exfiltrations when it comes to double extortions. And so these are some of the behaviors that you see in ransomware. Some of the indicators of compromise is rapid file renaming or extensions, or even increase in the I/O on many devices or many files, and presence of ransom node in some cases. These are some of the things that there is actually a ransomware in your system. And some of the defensive mitigation is to imitate our backup, or to segment our file, or to use EDR for behavioral detections and struct patches and list privileges to strengthen our system. And when we go to analysis properly, we'll look at how we can achieve all this. We'll go to dynamic analysis on how to analyze behaviors and how to go about all this. So ransomware is one of the malware, and so another one is called spyware. Spyware is a software that gather information about the users and organizations. Examples of spyware is keyloggers. So it also talk about key logging, screenshotting, or screenshot capture, behavioral histories, and even credential theft. These are some of the things that actually spyware does. And some of the indicators of compromise, or to show, there is a spyware in your devices, in your system, in your network, is one, unusual CPU or microphone usage, unexpected add-ons of connection to the C2 endpoint devices, or even new credential use. These are some of the things, and mostly it attack your cameras, it attack your contact, attack your credential based part of your system, and therefore endpoint monitoring using anti-spyware, disable unneeded devices permissions, also enable multi-factor authentication are one of the ways we can defend against malware, against spyware. Another one is hardware. Have you ever observed, maybe we are browsing and you begin to see unsolicited ads on your system, or popping up on your browser, or popping up on your devices? You can see how actually discomfort it is. That is work of an hardware. So hardware is a software that display unwanted advertisement, often intrusive, and may include trackers as well. And most of the sites that you can see some of these hardwares are the pornographic site, or even phishing scan, or all this kind of things that are actually brought up about hardware. Some of the behavior that show that there's an hardware in your browser is what pop-up, unwanted pop-up. This is one of the things that show that there's an hardware, or browser redirecting, injected ads, tracking codes to ad server, sometimes bundles with installers. This is a show that there's an hardware issues in your devices. And indicators of compromise is browser home page changes, or many unrelated ads or unsolicited ads started popping up, and even your performance of your devices or your browser began to degenerate. It shows that there's an hardware in your browser. And what we need to do, since hardware is a browser issue, or mostly the browser challenges, one of the things we need to do is to browser hardening, to harden our browser using ad blockers, enforcing safe installation process sources, and even strengthening our anti-malware in our devices. So hardware is one of the things that each and every one of us have encountered directly or indirectly. Another one is called rootkit. Rootkit is a malware that hides its presence by subverting the operating system or the kernel mechanism. Sometimes you cannot see it you cannot see the icon, you might not even see the file, you cannot see the application, but it's carrying out each task. And so sometimes it hides files, it processes and even affect registry entries and persist at kernel level, or even evade detections. This is a work of rootkit. Indicators of compromise is that it causes discrepancies between the kernel and even the user level view, and hidden processes and anomalies in the system code. This is one of the work. This is the handwork of rootkit. And so it causes kernel, and so what we need to do to strengthen our devices, strengthen ourselves, is kernel integrity check, is to secure root or boot, and also offline scanning and the image compromised hosts if the adventure our system have been actually captured. Another one is called bootkits. Yeah, there's a difference between a bootkit and a rootkit. Bootkit is actually a rootkit variant that affects the bootloaders and even the boot sequences. Yeah, to achieve persistency before even the operating system loads. This is also a rootkit. However, this one focused on the bootloaders. And some of the behaviors of bootkit is a survive OS reinstall in some cases and load malware earlier in the boot chain before you even launch your system or power on or off your system. So some of the indicators of compromise is what it modify your MBR or even your UEFI or the boot time anomalies and causes persistent indicator after OS have been reinstalled. Even when you restore the operating system, you can still find it there because it affects your bootloaders. And so we need to secure our UEF boot and even use firmware to update our firmware and also reflash firmware if compromised. And if possible, we can re-image or verify boot chain. These are some of the ways we can defend against bootkit. Bootkit. And also we have other aspect of malware called the fileless malware. What is fileless malware? Fileless malware are malware that operate in the memory. This is actually memory malware. It affects our RAMs, it affects our memory, it affects, so it causes havoc to the memory or on the disk itself. And so it's called causes great havoc to our system. Some of the behavior is using our power share or even the system macro or even leave off on the LAN binaries of the system to execute the payload in the memory itself, not on the devices, not on the storage or the storage devices, but on the memory. And so some of the indicators that show, there is actually this type of malware in our system is what? Is suspicious memory processes. It causes unusual power share command. It causes the power share in the Windows to actually started operating, giving its own command, and also causes a lack of disk artifacts. So these are some of the things that you can see or you experience when you are being infected with fileless malware. But however, when doing our project or doing the hands-on practical on malware analysis, we will install all this type of malware to be sure and to see how it works. And so what we need to do to strengthen ourselves, to protect ourselves, is write a script blocking or even to bring about the AMSI or the EEP or the EDR monitoring for scripting and command anomaly, and also we can carry out when it is too much, we are not too sure, we can carry out memory forensic, and that is part of a digital forensic. Another one malware is called keylogger. Keylogger captures the keystroke to harvest credentials and stay sensitive information. And some of the behavior is log key event. It causes exfiltration log and maybe take screenshot, or depending on the nature of the keylogger. And some of the things that we know that there's a keylogger in our system is unexpected file write, outbound transfer with credentials like strings, or high frequency of our I/O around the user activity. Is a show that actually there's a keylogger in our devices or in our system. And how we can actually fight against or preserve against it is by using an endpoint protection or MFA, so that stolen credentials are less useful and anti-keylogger tools can actually be mitigated. So another one is boot or bootnet malware. Boot turn infected machine to a boot and control it by an operator as part of the bootnet. And so it receives instruction, conduct the DDoS attack, and even causes spam, and mostly sometimes can even causes crypto mining and as well as mass outbounds of activities. And so this is actually causing mostly network, and causes network anomalies, causes network challenges. And so one of the things we need to do is to think hold and take down coordinations with the ISP, which is the Internet Service Provider. Another one is called boot backdoor. It can also be called remote access Trojans, but however, remote access Trojan is not only the backdoor. Even the command line injection is also a backdoor. So it provides persistent remote access and give full interaction control. It causes some of the behavior is remote command executions or exfiltrations or file transfer or even screen and control and persistencies. These are what backdoor actually causes. So when you have a backdoor in your system, what it's doing that it creates an opening for the attackers to actually remotely control your devices. It creates it becomes a threat whereby the attacker can sit anywhere and carry out any command on your devices. And it also causes unexpected remote session or unknown services listening to our devices, or even unusual admin level activity is being carried out. It shows that there is a backdoor sitting on our devices, and we need to deal with it. And one of the ways we can protect ourselves or harden ourselves against backdoor is by hardening remote access or using EDR, endpoint detection, response, process monitoring, and even network isolation and credential rotation. These are some of the ways that we can actually help to backdoor. Another one is called dropper or loader. Dropper or loader. Dropper is a small initial stage of malware whose sole purpose is to deliver or execute the real payload. Yeah, in itself, they are not the payload, but they deliver the payload. They are the one that can hide themselves. Just for like example, like if you in biology you talk about malaria, whereby mosquito itself is not the malaria parasite, but it carries the malaria parasite, the anelophi, the plasmodium or parasite that causes malaria, and so the female mosquito in itself is here is the loader. So when talking about biologists and health, no, so it's a small part, and some of the behaviors of loader or dropper is that it drop additional components like payload or even fetch payload from remote server and unpatch them in our devices. These are some of the handwork of dropper or loader, and some of the indicator of compromise is that it fetches network activity, creations of new file, or even short after execution and transit processes. And it defends, and one of the things we need to do is to block suspicious download or automatic download on our system, and inspect installer or content filtering before actually downloading it or before installing it on our devices. Wow, there is another one called exploit kits. I know you might not have heard about this. However, exploit kits are toolkits that exploit client-server vulnerability, like the browsers or the plugin, to deliver the real malware automatically. It exploits the client-server vulnerability, like it affects your browser, for example, so that it can automatically download the malware and install it on your devices. And some of it is like they redirect victims to exploit landing pages or even successful exploitation leading to payload execution. These are some of the behaviors of the exploit kit. And even redirections in browsing log or user exploit related to payload or trafficking exploit landing to different pages that you don't initially intend to visit. And so we must patch our browser and plugin. We must block malware domain or use even web filterings or endpoint detections and response to be able to plug it. So another one is called macro malware. These are basically micro office malware. It affects the Windows malware, the Microsoft Office malware. It's a malicious macro embedded in Office documents and other macro capable files. And some of the behaviors is that it helps on opening, when we open our document like our Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word, it can also execute that code, and often it uses PowerShell to download additional payload to our system. These are some of the things, behaviors of this, and the indicators of compromise is that it causes child processing executing PowerShell, and also obfuscate the macro code of the system. So one of the things we need to do is to disable the macro by default, so that it cannot be automatically be executed, and use document sensitization, sanitizations, and also training where human capital sensitization is also important. Boom, another one called the logic bomb. Let me give you a scenario about a logic bomb. Assuming an employee, an insider threat, or a malicious employee, put a bomb in the company server and say, oh, any day that I am being sacked from this office, and my data is being erased from this database, then any day my name is being taken away from this database, that the server or the database should crash. And so prevention, the employee do something wrong and he or she is being fired from the organizations, and a new employee comes, or a new IT person or technical person comes to take over his position, and the manager will say, remove this person from the database, it's no longer part of us, and the person removes, you just see boom, and there the database or the server will crash. And this is example of a logic bomb. So it's a code designed to execute a malicious action when certain conditions are being met. It could be a behavior waiting to trigger when deleted, as I've already explained, or destroy services. Indicators of compromise that there's a logic bomb is scheduled task or dormant code that activate later, or symptom tied to a specific trigger. It's an example that there's a logic bomb. And so one of the things we need to do is code review. We must review a code, monitor for unusual scheduled tasks, or even immutable backup and swift change control. These are some of the things that we need to do. Wiper the Viper. So we'll talk about Mr. Wiper. What is Mr. Wiper here? I'm talking about wiper in terms of malware. I'm not referring to a person. So wiper is a malware whose primary purpose is to destroy data, not ransom. It's to destroy data. And the behavior is that sometimes it override or even corrupt file, it corrupt disk, and disk structures, and even the MBR or the UEFI to render the system unusable. That means you cannot use it again after you have been infected by a wiper. When there is a mass deletions or overwriting or unrecoverable data or even disk, your backup is suddenly being destroyed, it means that Mr. Wiper the Viper is already at your desktop, and you need to deal with it, or you need to protect yourself against it. And one of the things you need to do is offsite immutable backup. You have to develop immutable backup, a backup that cannot be easily affected by malware, and so you need to use strong protection to do so, or rapid containment, or use forensic capture to determine the scope of the website. The stealer. One thing I always talk about malware is like a devil. It can either kill, steal, or destroy. So if it cannot kill you, or kill your devices, or kill your infrastructure, it will try to damage it or destroy it. If it cannot destroy it, it will steal something from you. And so it can, in other way, it is either kill, steal, or destroy. So the stealer or the info stealer designed to harvest credential, token, or even cookies and browser data and crypto wallet. So it's stealing something. It's mostly for credential harvesting, token harvesting, or cookies harvesting. And the behaviors of it is that it harvests or exploits data silently, often sold as service, or stealer as a service. These are one of the things that it does, and one of the indicators of compromise that there is a stealer or the info stealer in your devices is the suspicious file read or browser store or even outbound post to unknown endpoints and presence of non-stellar process signatures in your devices. And one of the things we need to do to defend ourselves against it is to use multi-factor authentication, credential vaulting, monitor for unusual authentication, or even endpoint control. These are some of the things that we need to do to safeguard ourselves against stealers. Yeah, there's one called banking malware. Especially those in the financial industries are one of the things that they face, banking malware. This is a malware that targets online banking or financial transactions, often inject into browsers or intercept traffic. Now, one of the things that is the behavior is what called web injecting. It injects the web browser or the web application. It's also like a form grabber. It grabs the form whenever a user wants to submit a form, or even causes overlaying. It lay over the existing or the applications and often modify transaction or steal credential. And some of the things that show that there is a banking malware is that browser injection hook or new browser extension being installed on our browser, or suspicious network connection during banking activities. It's an example that there is a banking malware actually affecting or targeting us. And so some of the defense we need to do is to what? Transaction anomaly detection. Can get a transaction anomaly detection, harden browsers or isolate succession for banking, or even using multi-factor authentication. Another one for cryptojackers. Another one is called cryptojacker or crypto mining. Yeah, one of the things is that cryptography is very important. Cryptography helps to safeguard or protect us from some of the known malware. But then there are other malware that can actually invade or penetrate the cryptography or aspect of our devices, especially cryptography or cryptocurrencies. And so cryptography uses built-in resources to mine cryptocurrency without the consent of the miner, of the real miner. And one of the behavior that show that there's cryptojackers in our system is high CPU or even GPU usage, continuous background processes, battery drainage, or mobile devices. It's one of the things that we are being affected by cryptography. Or indicator, and one of the indicator of compromise is that it elevates resource usage. Unknown processes ingest script on our website, like our crypto website called cryptojacking via browser. And so we need to monitor our resources, block no mining script or domain, and also patch exploit services if need be. Then another called polymorphic or metamorphic malware. You might not have heard this, or it might not be common. It's a technique rather than a type. It's not actually a fully type, it's a technique. It mutates code to evade signature detection. Polymorphic simply means the same payload, different appearance. That's what we call polymorphic. The same payload, different appearance. So it's the same payload but different appearance. It's like a ship. It's like a wolf in ship loading. So it's like a wolf in ship loading having the same payload but different appearances. Encryption and changing decryptors. And also we have metamorphic. Metamorphic is actually write its own code structurally to produce different binaries. And so some of the behavior of polymorphic or metamorphic malware is that it constantly change file signature but the same behavior. It constantly change file signature but has the same behavior, and it varies hashes across sample with similar behavior. Detection need, especially behavioral detection and behavioral detection or analysis, need to be carried out. Sometimes if you carry a static analysis, it will not be able to achieve that because of the aspect of it. And so these are that is what we call the polymorphic or metamorphic. And so we need to use behavior detection, behavior-based detection like the EDR or sandboxing or YARA rules for rule pattern. And then supply chain malware. There's another one, is supply chain malware. Supply chain malware is actually malware that introduced into software and hardware during development or distribution stage. It compromises the vendor itself, and so a sign our trusted software become a vector, and so it will widespread impact when distributing. So it actually affects the vendor itself instead of a client itself. So it affects the vendors, and this can actually causes that. And there is some of the indicators of trusted app behaving abnormally or acting maliciously is a sign that there is a supply chain malware, or multiple customer reporting similar compromise after vendor updates, like what happened to Microsoft during one of their updates last year, whereby causes blind screen effect. It's one of what we call a supply chain malware that it can happen. So we also have the firmware or the embedded malware. The firmware or the embedded malware. So what is firmware? Firmware is actually a compromised firmware on devices like the BIOS or the UEFI or the network devices embedded controller. It affected the BIOS itself, the BIOS setup. It affected the BIOS server, and it had to detect persistence below because it's below the operating system level. So it's very hard to detect sometimes, and so it can also reinfect operating system upon the reinstall of that operating system. And so persistent anomaly after reimaging or integrity check actually fail can cause such attack, can be a sign that you are being infected by firmware or embedded malware. So we have IoT malware, which actually target Internet of Things devices like the router, the camera, the DVR, all with weak or default credentials. These are IoT malware. And some of the enlisted devices in botnet, the DDoS attack, or use them to pivot the point. One of the things that will show is that there is a IoT malware in our devices is straight outbound traffic from devices logging attempt or even device joining botnet. And so what we need to do is to change our default password or default credential, and also conduct network segmentation for IoT, firmware update, and even limit exposure to internet. And malware is not only limited to network or to devices. Mobile devices also, Android, iOS also have their own natures of malware, and this type of malware target mobile platform like Android is more commonly targeted due to its openness, and some of its behaviors like the premium, SMS fraud, credential harvesting, spyware, banking Trojan, or even the side load apps. These are examples of the behaviors of mobile malware. And one of the indicators of compromise is unexpected permission, battery drainage, high data usage, even new app installed without your consent, is that there is a mobile malware. And one of the things we need to do to defend ourselves outside the analysis part is that we must use application from official app store, review permission, we use mobile EDR, and secure MDM policy. These are some of the things we need to use in order to overcome this type of malware. Another one is potentially unwanted program, which is called the PUP. Now, what is potentially unwanted program? It is a program that the user may have installed willingly but perform unwanted actions, like add injections, two bars challenge, and so on and so forth. So it causes bundle install or even browser modification and causes tracking. The last one I want to talk about is called the zombies. The zombie are actually browsers malware. It replicates itself, and it seems as if it's sending traffic to a web browser or to a network or to a server, and it will be as if thousands of persons is visiting that particular website at a time. And that is zombie, and that is one of the work of zombie. So in our subsequent class, we will also be looking at how we can identify each of these malware based on their behavior and also based on their activity and their functions, and how to be able to eliminate them or contain them or minimize their risk in our devices, in our infrastructure, and how to be able to overcome malware attack. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe, or don't forget to follow us on that. So another one is, before I round up this session, is called scareware. Scareware is a fake security alert designed to frighten users into paying or installing software. Oh, your browser is outdated, your email, your this thing, please update it now. If not, you'll not be able to do this, you'll not be able to do that. It's actually a scareware, and it causes fake scan result, pop-up urgent payment, or install of fake antiviruses. Is actually example of scareware. And all you need to do about scareware is user education, or using a blocker, a pop-up, a browser blocker, or even verify security product. There's another one called the DGA based or advanced C2 techniques. What is DGA? It's called domain generation algorithm. It created many pseudo-random domain for resilient or even advanced C2 client-to-client uses legitimate services like Twitter cloud storage to do their malicious activity. One of the behavior is frequent domain changes fall back to being services for C2 comms, or even multiple fake DNS lookup for algorithms, or unusual use of cloud API. It's an example that there's a DGA, or a domain generation algorithm based or advanced techniques error. These are some of the malware attacks that we face, and these are some of the malware attacks that we face. And as we continue with our analysis, we also look at what it's all about. And so see you in the next class, and thank you for staying with us till this time.